Alright. Today we have a deck profile by Dynames. He topped WGP Indonesia 2022 with Tachis, which is very nice. And I'm pretty excited for this deck profile as this is a pretty what do I call this?
Epic gamer list. I don't know.
True. An epic gamer list.
The list was like you could say it evolved over the last 3 months, like not 3 months, like 3 weeks or 3 weeks a month. You and me have been constantly changing the list and tinkering, and then this was the final list we made. And this was the list I had the least amount of games with, but it worked better than all the other lists. And then I went 5-1 in Swiss with this list.
Yeah, I love how I told you to put in 2 of a card, like right before the tournament, and it worked out.
Like 3 days before, no, it was like 5 days before the actual event, put 2 of this in. And I was like, no, Charlie, I don't want to. And then my other friend, he sold me on the point why that card is so good. And also in one of my test games, if I had that card in my deck, I straight up would have won the game. But because it was something else, I didn't win and I ended up losing. But if I had this card in the deck sooner, I would have won that game 100%. So yeah, that's why it was sold on the card. So yeah, can't wait to explain this deck is the way it is. There's a lot of questionable choices that don't seem like that kind of contradict a lot of beliefs in Tachis, but it works. Like, trust me.
Beliefs update over time, like what's good, what's bad updates over time as well. So this is basically a culmination of all of that testing into one deck list. Why don't we start off with grade 3s? Let's see what you ran.
Okay, so for grade 3s, I'll start with, so it's 3 Spino, 2 Anger. This is the controversial part here. 1 Dark Rex and 1 Mercenary. I'll start with the Spino driver, I guess, before we get into the real spice of the list. So 3 Spino driver. The reason we play this is, one, it's one of our best ride targets to ride up into if we want to farm. Because this is like the best grade 3 to farm hand on, while also being able to somewhat pressure your opponent, because this makes an excel and you call a card from hand, and the card you call usually would be a spoiler for the grade 2s, a Dilo, which will extend you another attack. If you have red or blue, it also procs your tires, it procs that, so you can call those out and extend even more. This is just our best grade 3 for that. Also, if we're in situations where we're playing against decks like Savas mainly, this against Savas, you actually, with this deck specifically, you don't care about giving them first strike. Like, if they strike, it's like Gen Bold usually, and they're not going to really push you that much on that turn. So this just making an extra excel, you can just ride up against that deck, make an excel. Then on your next strike, on your first strike turn, you're going into a first strike turn with at least 2 excels, potentially 3 if you reroll. So this is just our best grade 3, and this did come up in my tournament run, which I'll talk about later. Really good ride target if we have to get into that situation. Usually though, in this deck, we don't actually have to ever ride up first, because our grade 2 game is just way better than a lot of other decks. It's just nice that the option is there. Like, again, these 5 grade 3s, so the 3 Spino, 2 Anger, a lot of the time they're just excel makers. We don't usually ride up. If we do ride up and we're trying to kill, this is our better option. This is just a farm. So that's why we play this. Still, I think it's self-explanatory. Really good ride target. Definitely need this. We don't want to play 4 because, again, this is only for riding up to farm. We don't really need to see multiples. Just 3 is fine. Like, I never really noticed the 4th one, really. Like, I didn't feel like I needed the 4th one ever, because if I didn't have this, I would have this. So I could just ride anyway and still make an excel. So yeah, I think this is pretty standard. I don't think this is too controversial. Now this is the bit which a lot of people asked about. Anger in this deck is our best way of just riding up and winning, and straight up just winning the game. Back then, when Heal Guardians first came out, and also before we got like other better cards, this was probably, if we would play like the standard Anger deck, we would just ride up and try to kill on Anger. But the problem with that was, with Heal Guardians, it makes our opponent's defense on turn 3 way better. Very often be able to survive our Anger turn, and then we have like no hand, and then we would just die on their first strike, because whatever they showed would kill us unless the clan doesn't have good first strikes. But let's just not assume such things. So this is like, so back then this was pretty weak, but big emphasis on but now. We're in a format where there's a lot of decks that can actually ride down, and riding down turns off Heal Guardians. So the main examples are the biggest one that people know about are, it's like Tavas, Nightmare Dolls, Steam Maidens, even Angel Feather. If you run into that deck can also ride down. It's just like one of the best ways to just kill our opponent once they ride up and then ride back down. We can just ride into this, we turn off heal guardians completely. Like their heal guardians are turned off. They're basically at the mercy of their defensives. And like again, we're doing at least like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attacks, and 2 of those attacks I hopefully are at least our sweepers, and our sweepers will be huge at that point. If we get into situations like that, this card is really strong. I really value that option to just be able to ride up and randomly kill, because a lot of people actually like are a bit scared of Tachi strikes. Believe it or not, they think like if we give Tachi first strike we might die. Not always true. I went in with the assumption that not a lot of people would know what my deck did, and because of that they wouldn't want to give me first strike unless they had a reason to. Just being able to ride into this after a very long grade 2 game, when our opponent is hopefully at least 3 or 4, we can just ride this and randomly kill. Now you could argue, well, if that's the case, why don't we do like this and 2 of this? If you value this ride up more than like the ride up kill more than farming, that's fine. I can see that argument. But I just really like the option of having this over like having the option to farm instead of this, because again, when you go for an anger turn, you do have to keep in mind that if you don't kill on the anger turn and like you don't time this properly, you just ride up and you try to kill without like preparing beforehand. You don't really like you didn't really keep track of what's in your opponent's hand, and you just try to ride up into this and kill, but then your opponent somehow survives. Then you're kind of screwed because you don't have many cards in hand. Best case scenario, you cripple them. If I'm in situations where I really want to ride up, I just need to ride up because I have nothing on board, and I don't have any like sweeper, or I don't have a mercenary on board, and I just want to farm hand and try to survive. This is the better option for me. That's why I value this more than this. If you value the ride up kill more, then this is fine as well. Like that's one of the main reasons we play this. It did come up in round 6 of my run against Steam Maidens. I'll talk more about that later. But yeah, this card, funny enough, this was the card that Charlie told me to put in, because when we were slowly like evolving the list, we started putting in more sweepers, and Charlie basically just said, well, if we're putting in this many sweepers, why don't we just play Anger Blader at that point? Like just as a 2-off, you can just ride up and randomly kill. Which in testing, it did come up. This just won you the game on turn 3, like for no reason. It's pretty funny. And then like I got this card. So Charlie told me to put this in on Sunday, like 5 days before the tournament. I posted on Facebook, I'm looking for 2 Anger Bladers. Someone messaged me an hour later that he has 2 SPRs, and then I bought them. And then I got them by Tuesday. So luckily it was the day before registration closed. I got them. So yeah, really thankful I was able to get these before the tournament. And yeah, this came up a lot during the day. Pretty happy about it. I know it's Anger Blader. I know it's not people love it's not a Tachi card, but hey, if you want to win, this is probably the best build for that. Also, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention this. Anger Blader's second skill, like, also retire stuff on your opponent's board. So against Stavas, especially, once they write down, you can ride into this, and you can use the first skill to start gauging stuff, and you're also nuking their pieces on board, and Stavas really doesn't like that. You kill their pursuits, you kill their Nikki, you kill especially their pursuits. You kill their pursuits, like, they're not really having a good time. That's like their biggest speed stick. You kill pursuit, you kill Nikki, you kill Dennis. Then on their Genbolt turn, when they go into Genbolt, ideally they will not have many cards in hand when they go into Genbolt. Then when they check top 7 of Genbolt, they'll call 2. They're forced to commit more hand just to get the draw 3 and the restand and to restand 2. So you're forcing ideally at least like 4 cards out of their hand just so they can draw 3 cards, because Genbolt will give them +2 when placed, and then they have to commit 4 more cards, so they have 6 rear guards on board, so they can restand their 2 rear guards and they can draw 3. So it's actually a minus for them to do that. So actually you're very happy with the retire skill as well. And it also did come up in round 6, which I'll talk about.
I love this guy.
I'm just gonna, this was also questionable. Like people said, I think this isn't too spicy. This makes everyone understands why we play Mercenary. Just a big beat stick on turn 1 if we see it. Good to call a red or blue. Stride with this. Gauge it with shooter under red or blue. Get a free beat stick. Like I don't think this is pretty self-explanatory. This though, now this is a card which I think a lot of people are like questioning. Like why are you playing this and not the second Mercenary, or why is this not this Anger Blader, or why is this not another grade 2? There's several reasons for that. One, if this was a Mercenary, this means essentially in our deck we'll only have 5 rideable grade 3s. We're not including Kill Guardians. 5 rideable grades that we want to ride. It decreases the ride consistency of the deck overall, because that means we have less ride targets. And again, in this deck we are gauging a lot more than like the Engorge build generally did. Sometimes our grade 3s will just go to gauge. It happens. If we have to G assist for them, right? If we G assist into this, because it's like at that point we still make an Excel marker, we're still striding. At that point, it doesn't really matter that this is a Dark Rex. But if this was a mercenary and you G assist into this, you can't ride it. You're stuck on grade 2. Your opponent now strides while you're on grade 2 and you're dead. That feels really bad. So that's why that's one of the reasons why we'd run this. Now you could say, oh, but Merc, it's bigger than one. Yes, mercenary is just 27. It doesn't need any other pieces on board to get big. That's true. Can scale as big as Merc thanks to our like sweeper. Thanks to sweeper. Because ideally, if we have 2 sweepers on board with a bunch of gauges, this is either the same or as big as Merc. So if you think about it, this is essentially the second mercenary still. The only difference is we can actually write this and we can't write this. You can say, oh, but that might not come off. Then yes, maybe like 1 in 15, 20 games, maybe 30, who knows.
Okay,
That'll
it'd
come
be a
up.
little more than that. Like
Yeah.
1 in 10 or something.
Yeah, well, sure. 1 in 10 games, sure. You wish this was a second mercenary. Generally, though, you're happier that there'll be more games where you're happier this is a Dark Rex and not this. A situation where you have to ride it. If you draw Merc in your hand, you can't get down on the field somehow. You have to just guard with it, and you have to G assist. That feels like really shit. You're going -3 overall. You're minusing this, then you're minusing 2 from the G assist. That feels really, really bad. Like that doesn't feel good at all. A cute trick with this card, right? So its first skill says when it's in drop zone, you can sack 2 gauges on your board, like so from probably your sweepers, and you can either write this on your Vanguard circle as Sen, and it gets drive -1. Oh no, it doesn't lose drive.
You just write.
It just writes, and you just write this on your field. You just write this, or you can call it. Why is this important? For example, if we gauge this randomly under our Regiodon or our Bowsprint, and we let's say don't have any other grade 3 in hand, but we're in a situation where we just want to ride up because maybe our opponent's grade 2 game better, or we think we can just ride up and kill because they're at high damage, or we can maybe sea breeze our opponent. I'll get into that in a sec. Like we can just sack 2 gauges and we can write this and we can make an Excel, then we can go into sea breeze. This actually gives you an off. This actually makes sea breeze in this deck viable because you have that option. So even if you don't have a grade 3 in hand, as long as this is in your drop zone, maybe you gauge it like I said on the red or blue and you retired it off Mega Rex. If you maybe if you found it off a Prism Bird and you want to discard it to thin your deck, that also works. I'm just very happy that this is a Dark Rex more often than this is a mercenary. In the tournament itself, that was like maybe 1 game where I saw this on turn, but I drew this in my opening hand, and if this was a mercenary, I would have maybe been able to pressure. Sure, that happens, but the rest of the day didn't matter. And in round 6 again, a Dark Rex over this was way better for your Anger Blader turn. Because remember, this gets 2k per equip gauge on board. So if you have a field like this on an Excel, you have, sorry, I'll just do this. You have this on an Excel marker, and you have a sweeper like this, and you have this on your Vanguard circle. This is just like a big number because you're ideally should be having a lot of gauge because of Anger skill. This also be a big number. Now you swing at this is +2 for every equip gauge on board. This one at least have 3 gauges, so you're going like +1, 2, 3. It's +6. Then this sweeper will probably have, let's say, 3 or 4 gauges, so that's another plus 12k probably. It's +8, and then this also probably have 4 or 5 gauges, so that's again another +10. So this guy just gets really big and it outscales Mercenary. On your Ganchu Raptor turn also, this will just be a bigger Mercenary. And you can actually restand this, unlike Mercenary. Where Mercenary, if you commit 3 gauges to it, it doesn't really do that much. But this having multiple gauges on board gives you bigger attacks compared to Mercenary. So that's why this, in my opinion, it's just a one-off. It might not come up at all. Like the whole tournament, it came up once. But it does, like I said, it doesn't come up all the time. But when it does come up, you're very happy that this is a Dark Rex and not a Mercenary. If you really don't like this, you want to play the second mercenary, fine. Trust me, like if in testing, this was more valuable to me than the second. Because again, in this build, we play more sweepers, so we generally don't even have space sometimes for the second merc on field. We at most just need 1. That's it for the grade 3s.
I do have one thing. So I know some people have come up to me personally and have asked me like, hey, why are you running Dark Rex over Savage King? The Savage King gets 5k per gauge.
Oh,
And it can get much bigger. And it's writable. Like, what's the difference between that and Dark Rex in your eyes?
Savage King is +5 for every gauge, right? You can move, when it attacks, you move all the gauges to it. If I'm not wrong, that's the skill.
Yeah, yeah.
1 is what I just mentioned, the Sea Breeze play with this. You can't do that with Savage King. You can actually write this on your drop zone. You can't do that with Savage King. That's 1 play. Second of all, yeah, okay, it does get bigger, but generally what that card would do is it would move all your gauges to it so that it becomes a big beat stick, right? Now the problem with that is against control decks or decks like Narukami, Grand Blue that can generally retire stuff. You're generally moving all your gauges from one of your sweepers to that. Now by doing that, you're giving this sweeper will no longer have resist, so it's prone to getting targeted by, let's say, Cannoneer. The DIG guard can minus crit on it. You could say, oh then you just swing with this first and then that doesn't matter. Yeah, sure. But the problem is then next turn, on your next strike turn, they can do that again, and they can just G guard again, minus crit on the sweeper. And it's very hard sometimes. It can be hard to get this back to 3 gauges if you do that play. That's my reasoning for it, essentially. You go from having 1 towers that they can't deal with. Like, if they snipe this, like the Dark Rex, it's like whatever, right? Like, it doesn't, if it's on a Giga Dodo turn, you just don't gauge this, they snipe it, it's whatever, you still have 2 towers they can't deal with. If you move all your if this was Savage King, you move all the gauges here, now you have 2 targets they can get rid of. Now you're probably losing 5 gauges from this thing, and you're losing a sweeper. So you're just depriving yourself of more resources. This format doesn't have a lot of decks that retire. You can maybe play the Savage King, but this format we do have quite a bit of decks that can get rid of it. So that's where I see the value in this over Savage King. When I run Savage King, be my guess, I guess. But like, I think this is better for those reasons. Because Savage King is just like, you're committing so much resources to 1 card. If you don't win that turn, now they can get rid of this thing and they can get rid of your sweeper. Which if they get rid of both, you kind of cry because all your gauges will be gone. This will no longer be on board. You only have 1 sweeper on board. Like, you're probably very close to deck out. You can't Neberos. So yeah, that's the way I see it. So next up, grade 2s.
Grade 2s. This is also very spicy.
4 Mega Rex. If you're not playing 4 of this, you're bad at the game. I'm sorry. This card is very good. It's our best grade 2 ride. It's our best grade 2 game card. It's a extender. It extends on turn 2. It extends on any strike turn if we need it to. On a Nibiru's turn, if we have a Regiodon on field or a Blue Sprint, we can gauge the Regio or Blue Sprint we can gauge one of them from under the other with Shooter. Then we can swing with this, eat that one, draw card, we're getting our resources back, then that will call a Blue Sprint, then that will extend our attacks even further on the Nibiru's turn. I do see a reason to play less than 4 of this. Like, you can say, oh, maybe 3 is fine because you just need to see it on turn 2. It's generally on turn 2, you just need to write this, but at the same time, I just want to maximize the consistency. I always want to see this on turn 2. It's our best right target. On strike turns, it doesn't always put in that much work, but you're happy when you do need it. So yeah. Also, sometimes if you want to deny your opponent's Sea Breeze, having the extra copy is very important because you can ride 1. Let's say you wrote Shooter on turn 1, you have 0 soul. You can ride 1, do your whole play. Then the next turn, you can ride again. You're denying your opponent's Sea Breeze and you're giving yourself +1 soul, which is important for your Giga Dodo turn because generally this deck doesn't really generate soul outside of. And again, we ride Shooter turn 1, we're going -1 soul. So being able to just do that play while also denying our opponent's Sea Breeze is just really, really good. I hope I don't need to explain much here. This is this is just the best grade 2 guide. A lot of people are gonna go after Charlie for this one. Not 3, but 4 sweeper. Now, I know everyone is gonna say, why 4 sweeper? What the heck? Like, what is this? Charlie said that his guide sweeper was bad. Charlie said don't play sweeper. Charlie said this. Charlie said that. Okay. To be honest, I was in the same camp for a long time. When you look at it, when you think about it this way, sweeper is just really, really good in this kind of format. We have decks that have a lot of disruption during our turn. For example, DI, G-Guard that can minus crit. Genesis also has that, say, a G-Guard that can minus crit. We have decks like Kagero also can do that, but I mean, Kagero can also be able to do that. Narukami.
Hell Moon has their disruption G-Guard.
Hell Moon, Grand Blue, all these decks. Aside Shirayuki, they also have disruption by giving -10 to just having this card that's basically a towers that has resist, and it's also the power is also continuous. It's like really, really good. The fact that this can be like a 24k beat stick on turn 2, and it has resist, and it's just like your opponent generally can't deal with it, and this will scale more and more and more. So the longer your opponent leaves this on the board, eventually it's just going to be this big beat stick that they just can't deal with, and they eventually get snowballed out of the game. Really good in this meta. I will say that this card does take some level of skill, I guess, to fully utilize, because against certain matchups, you do want to be careful about how you manage your resources on this card. For example, against Spike Brothers, you don't really want to commit too many gauges on this deck, on this card, sorry, because of Breach Bird. Breach Bird can get rid of this by forcing it to intercept. Against Narukami as well. Generally, once this gets to 3 gauges, I wouldn't gauge this further because they can chobo this, and if you continue to gauge it, then now you just lost a bunch of gauges, you lost a bunch of resources, you're just getting closer and closer to deck out. So once you get to 3 gauges on this card, you can bait the chobo, force them to call the chobo down. Then after that, you can call another one, or you can just start doing your normal 2-game shenanigans with your Regiodons and stuff, and you're forcing them to. And you can also attack their chobo, which you just called down. So you can just keep bashing it, and they won't really like that. Because one, you're not giving them CB, and second of all, that's one less piece they have to extend on their exterminate turn and their stun burst turn. Generally, this card also you can just use it to bait answers out of your opponent. You can force them to answer this card, otherwise they just lose the game. Like because eventually the moment this card gets to resist, your opponent just can't deal with it. It's gonna snowball them out of the game. So yeah, again, I will say you need to know when to commit to this card, when not to commit. If you're playing against a deck like DI, again, they can Barrow Magnus and put this to soul. Then if that happens, you're kind of feeling bad. So I wouldn't commit that much to it. I'd still put quite a bit of gauges just because you want to be forcing them to take damage. Like against DI, this is one of the decks that you just rush DI because and you just try and stay at low damage against that deck, because this deck can just bash them to death and they can't do anything about it. Because that deck, if they're guarding, all their guard value is essentially either their combo pieces, so cards they need to get to 13 soul. It's triggers. If they guard with triggers, that means they don't have cards in hand to get to 13 soul unless they high roll. But pretty important in this format. I think it's really good. Won me a lot of my games on the day. It won me round 2. It won me round 4. It won me round 5. It won me round 6. This card is just insane. I think it's really good, this format. If you could play 3 if you want to play like the 4th Dilo. Spoiler, I only play 3. You could do that, but I just really like seeing this on turn 1 and turn 2, so I want to maximize the consistency. So yeah, and again, it's only really against Narukami and Spikes where they can really deal with this. Other decks can't really do that. So yeah, really happy with this card. I think people should at least try it out. They don't like it, it's fine, but I think once you start playing it more, you'll see why this is a lot better than other cards, and why we started like running it over other slots. I actually really wanted to play the 4th, but there's no room. This is just an extender. Like, I don't mean by extending attacks, but it just helps us extend our plays on our stride turn on turn 2. The effect is just on plays, counterblast 1, draw a card, call a card, and you may gauge it. You can call down this lets you call Mercenary on turn 2. You can call down a Sweeper on turn 2, gauge it, and then you can use its effect to gauge itself. And if you have a Sonic Noah boosting this, then it already has 3 gauges, so it automatically gets resist. So your opponent essentially just can't deal with it unless they have stuff that can. Removal that doesn't target. Really good card. The second skill is when Call from Gauge gets 10k. This is just really good on Giganoto turns, because we can shooter this under a Reggie or Blueprint. Oh, sorry, the clear's pretty bad there. We can shooter this. We can shooter this under a Reggie or Blueprint, and we can call it off our gauge, and it gets 10k, and then Giganoto gives us another 10k, so it becomes like 34 on an XL2 circle. Spoiler, we do go XL2 quite a bit in this deck. Like 34k, and then it sinks twice. It's just really, really hard for your opponent to deal with generally. Pretty good card. I think you should play at least 3. If you want to play the 4th, I don't really know what you'd cut for the 4th one, to be honest, because this deck's already pretty tight on space. But if you guys find something that you can cut for the 4th one,
You can cut the 3rd Spino, honestly.
maybe you could, but again, I like right consistency. 3 Regiodon, very self-explanatory. Don't play 4. If you play 4, it gets too cloggy. Because you can remember the calling from gauge effect is a hard once per turn, so you don't want to see too many of these generally. And again, I think any Tachi list that isn't like pure Anger Blader will always run this. So even in Anger Blader, I think some people run this. So like pure Anger, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to explain why. I will say though, in the early game, you do want to know like when to commit this, when not to commit this, because sometimes you don't really always have to go. Like, let's say you've been grade 2 gaming for a while, you don't always have to call the one Regiodon in your hand. Why? If you do that, now you don't have a Regiodon for your Giganoto turn or your Nep turn, or maybe even your Devastate turn if you have to. Like, you don't have this on board, so that means you extend less. Whereas maybe on turn 2 you didn't really need it at all. So on like turn 2 or turn 4, however long you've been grade 2 game, maybe you didn't need it at all, but you called it down, you rush, and on your next turn you don't have anything to extend with, so you're just doing less attacks overall on your strike turn. So you just need to keep in mind on when to use these, when not to use these, which I think just comes with experience by playing the deck a lot. I'll just show this as well, because they're basically the same card. It's 3 blue, 3 Reggie. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I will say though, against one deck in particular, you do want to prioritize more than this, and that's against T-Baitons, because of was it Lucina Bell? I think that's the card that can like bot deck. They have a card, in combination with Bearlock, they can bot deck one of our grade 1s on field. So if we call a blue sprint on a Giganoto turn, they can G guard, and then they can use the effect of Lucina Bell, bot deck this, and the gauge will just immediately go to draw. If that happens, we kind of feel really, really bad. So we don't really want that happening. So I will say against that deck, do prioritize this over that. But generally, they're both the same thing. Unless you're playing against an Excel or Protect deck, then this probably is better when you want to ride up into Spino, because this on an Excel 2 makes 14 magic number against Force. So the Excel and Protect decks, whereas this just makes 13. But if you're playing against Force decks, it's the same thing on Excel 1 or Excel 2. Pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Man, Dynames just spilling the Lucina tech in a Tachi deck profile.
Do you want people to lose? For a shooter, don't listen to Robbie Cole. Don't play 3. This is the best grade 2. This is honestly the best card in the deck, I think. This card does so much.
You said best grade 2. Would you like to clarify?
Oh, best card in the deck overall. This is just the best right target on turn 1. It's the best. It's how we can recycle our Regiodon and Blue Sprints. We can loop Regiodon and Blue Sprint with this essentially as well, because you can do this. You can Regi or Blue on field, rest this, gauge Regi or Blue from drop under that, and call their Blue Sprint out. The next turn you can do it again. It doesn't come up often in this deck, but the option is there. Really, really good card. Don't listen to Robbie Cole. Don't play 3. It's more than a right target. It does so much in this deck. You can gauge if you don't have a Dilo or something, and you really need to get sweeper to 3 gauges. You can rest this, gauge a sweeper gauge a card from your drop zone under the sweeper. Now it has 1 gauge. If you have a Noah behind it, then it gets to 3 gauges by itself already. Really, really good. Also lets you like your mercenaries to drop. And you can use this, put it back under your Regi or Blue Sprint, and then you get to use it again. Same thing with your Dilo. You get to call Dilo. You get to call sweeper off this because of from Regi or Blue Sprint. So yeah, really, really important card. I don't think I need to explain why you play this. Next up, for the last. I'll just do this first. 3 Sonic Nova. This is just our best booster for. You could play 2, but at 2 I didn't see this card come up that much. When I played 3, I suddenly drew it a lot more. So I was able to get my sweeper to really, really big numbers very fast early because of that. Before I did, instead of the 3rd Nova, I did play 1 Elementaria Sanctitude, the Blitz Order. Which was pretty good. There's 2 issues with that card in this deck specifically. If you gauge that under a Regi or Blue Sprint, because you can't call it, it's just dead. It just goes to drop. You can't recycle it. You just wasted a card. Of course, that's a very small chance of happening, but it can happen. Second, and the second reason is this deck generally wants to just beat your opponent down as quickly as possible. You just want to kill them fast. In this deck, it's either you kill your opponent fast or they kill you. So being a Sonic Nova means we have more pieces on turn 1 or turn 2, which we can call to just bash our opponent in the face. Whereas if this was a Sanctitude, that's a card we can't call down, a card we can't gauge with Anger Blader, and a card that like we just can't commit to board to bash face or for our like strike turns, like a Giganoto turn, a Nebulos turn. That doesn't feel very, very good. Do have to keep in mind the gauge when this boosts your rear guard, the gauge is mandatory. So unless you're boosting, so sometimes maybe you don't want to boost your sweeper with this because you might get you really, really close to deck out if that does come up. And also, so just be careful about when you call this and when you don't call this in the early game. When you have a sweeper on board, if you're playing against a deck that doesn't have ways to get rid of it, then it's fine to just boost because you're just gonna scale your sweeper out of control and your opponent can't do anything about it. The second skill is when the attack get boosted hits a Vanguard, you can sack another Vanguard and draw a card. This is also really, really good. Because if we going second, we can do shooter. Right shooter, call down a sweeper from the shooter's effect. Then we do this, like we call sweeper and Nova to one column. Then we can call down a blue sprint right here. Now this sweeper will get a gauge from shooter's effect. Then we can swing. We can gauge this. We can swing with Vanguard. We can stack trigger powers here. Swing with this. Gauge resist. This is 32 on turn 1, by the way. Then it has an on hit. If it hits, you can sack this, draw a card, and you can call the gauge under it. So you're doing 4 attacks on turn 4 on turn 1, which is just insane. Your opponent is forced to drop a heal card or drop a lot of cards. Otherwise, they're dealing with another extra attack, which is even better for you. So they're basically at like the mercy of their defensive at that point. But this sweeper will hit over already 1 defensive. It hits over 2 defensives even. So you're just forcing cards out of their hand as early as possible. Really, really good. I think that should explain why we play this. I don't think I need to explain further why we play that over.
You can think of it. Think of it as like demolition dragon for Dachis. The constant on hit pressure.
It's basically demolition. Yeah, it's constant on hit. If you call it behind Vanguard as well, if you don't have a Mega Rex, it's like a pseudo Mega Rex, but that doesn't come up that much generally. It does come up sometimes though when you have to write Dilo or a Red Geodon. Next up, for running a grade 1, 2 Prism Bird. This deck sometimes just gauges our grade 3s on accident, and we just want to be fighting our grade 3s in this deck. Pretty self-explanatory. If you want to play like you don't want to play the third Noah, you want the third Prism Bird, that also kind of works. That works as well. You can also this for Elementarius Execute, but again, and you can play like I don't know, maybe the fourth Noah or something else, whatever floats your boat. But I think this is just a better way. Against Force and against Excel and Protect deck, sorry. This boosting a Mega Rex or Regiodon, it makes magic numbers, which makes 22 against Excel and Protect. That can come up sometimes when you have to write up into Spino Driver, when you write Spino Driver or on Nebulos Hertz, but doesn't come up all that often. So yeah. Next up is triggers. So 2 draw PGs. We want PGs. We also need draws. We need to find our pieces in this deck. We don't too many because we're gonna deck out then. So 2 is fine. I don't need to explain much about this. 3 stride fodder crit. We want to be striding. We don't really want to be ditching our Spinos or this sometimes because we want to be able to rewrite because this deck scales very well with more XLs. So just having this is nice. You could say, why don't you play the 4th one? So there's another trigger which we put instead of the 4th crit, which is I think more valuable. So yeah, we'll show that in a minute. Next up, 4 Dino Dial. So this I think is a bit of I need to explain this a little bit. So the effect is, it has one effect. It's a 5 kicker. It's an old crit. Put it to soul and you can countercharge 1. That's all it does. This helps a lot for 2 main reasons. One, we need soul for our Giganoto turn. The more soul we can generate on Giganoto, the way better like our turn can be. We can extend way more. We essentially can give like 4 or 5 units a tidal assault effect and we can restand them. It's also a crit. So we want to see crits in this deck. We check a crit on Giganoto turn. We're feeling really, really good. The counter charge does come up because if our opponent thinks like, I just call haughtily, now they can't out my board at all. But generally our opponent doesn't know what our deck does generally. So we'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna call haughtily, now I'm safe. But let's say they still gave you a lot of damage. You can just do this, go to soul, counter charge, go to soul, counter charge. Now you have all the face up CB. So you can still deal with the 1 Honolulu. You can still do full combo on Giganoto turn despite a Honolulu being on board. Or you can just Nebulos. That works too if they have a Honolulu on board. But Neb generally is pretty weak, so I wouldn't advise you going into that. Giganoto is just our best strike. Maybe sometimes it's Genshi Raptor, but generally Giganoto is like our best first strike to kill. And this is giving soul for that, giving us CB for that. If our opponent tries to deny us CB for the Giganoto, we could just counter charge like that. So yeah, pretty good.
The other thing as well is when you're going against someone who does know the matchup, and they'll learn to damage deny you essentially, or at least like dealt the damage sometime in the game, you can just put it to soul and then reuse Dilo skill over and over again, right? The call counter blast draws.
If our opponent just rides up sometimes and they know, oh, Giganoto costs CB, so they want to deny the Giganoto, they'll swing into rear like a sweeper. It doesn't matter. They just want to get drive checks to their hand. Now we don't have any face up damage. We can call this, put it to soul and counter charge. This gives us resources for the Giganoto. It stops the damage now. And also our opponent is just like keeping us at 1 damage is also fine because like That means we're not pressured nearly as much, so we can probably survive their strike turn easily. Next up, 2 crit stamps. We just want to see crits. Honestly, this thing seeing crit and Gigan turn is really good, so we just maximize the option to see this. In this format, maybe you can argue draw PGs are better, but again, like we just really want to see crits in this deck, so that's why we play 2. Then more heal guards. I don't think I need to explain this. Pretty self-explanatory. Heal guards are broken. Helps us survive the early game. Stops complete damage denial. If we gauge this under a red or blue sprint, we don't really feel as bad because at least it's a 10k attacker. Which if it was like a vanilla 20k heal, it's not we can't attack with. It's a 5k. We cry. But at least if this is on board from red or blue, it doesn't feel that good. But you know, it's better than having like a 5k crit or like a 5k body on board. Next up, OTs, cringe mechanic, but we want to win, so we play them. Now, a lot of people ask, why don't you play the Cray one? If you were paying attention to like what I've been saying the whole video, this is our main strike now, not Neberos. So generally, this or Genshu Raptor. So generally, we don't really care that much about the extra 100 mil. Just the fact we create an extra Vanguard attack already creates so much pressure for our opponent, and they just can't deal with it. Also, for effects like Gigadodo and Genshu, they're not actually once per turn.
Hold on.
So
Hold on. You can't proc Giganoto again. It's when it becomes engorged.
I'm dumb. Never mind. Cut that out of the video, please.
No. But there is another reason for using Dragvita on Giganoto. Now, what is that reason?
Big dinosaur swing.
Yes and no. It's mainly to check more crits. Getting more crits is better than an extra 100 mil rear guard.
The extra triple drive does matter, like on Giganoto, because you want to check, gives you more chances to hit crits. You hit crits on Giganoto turn, it's like the stonks. It's really, really good, really scary. You check one crit, like just one crit on Giganoto turn is already so scary. Just being able to check, just giving you more ways to check crits. Also, okay, you can argue though the extra 100 mil on Giganoto turns is like, well, you give 100 mil to 2 things now, essentially 4 swings that are essentially PG or die. That's true. Generally, the extra Vanguard attack also just creates the same amount of pressure, if not more. So yeah, not really good. Cringe mechanic, ban these, please. Next up, the starter, Dragon Egg. I know a lot of people are gonna ask why this and not. This is where we talk about the feng shui. If you tested a lot with like the variety of starters, you would know that this card has the better feng shui compared to Minimum Carno. So yeah, very, very important. Very important that you run this one. Minimum Carno. Okay, unless you play English format and you don't have this in SP, you can play Minimum Carno SP. But if you don't have an SP, you play this, the normal one. Very good, very important. This is honestly like so cracked. I didn't brick that much at all that day because of this being my starter. Against Charlie, we tested it. One game I high rolled. The next game I tried Minimum Carno and I G-assisted for grade 1. So yeah, that starter. This is the best one. So if you're not playing this starter, you're throwing. Unless your Minimum Carno is SP, then the G's. The G-Zone, 2 Giganoto. We don't ever really use the third one because if we do, we're just gonna deck out. Also, sometimes you don't ever have the soul for the third one. So yeah, our best kill strike. Really insane card. A lot of people like Charlie said that this card wasn't like that amazing. It was just it's a very situational stride or stride which you need to build your deck around. Well, spoiler, now we do build a deck around it because it's the best way to just kill our opponent. Like Neberos is cool, Engorge is cool, checking Seal Magnums is cool, but I mean killing our opponent is just way better. This is giving Tidal Assault effect to 3 things is just like at least 3 things just broke. It's just so cracked, so broken. And this scales so well with Excel circles, which spoiler can generate quite a bit because of Spino Driver. Really good card. I would at least play 2. This card is really, really good. If anyone wants to sell me Japanese SRs, please. Next up, speak of the Devil to Neberos. I miss this card so much, but sad he's not that good right now. I mean, the G-Zone skill can come up just being a free gauge on just being able to gauge something on board, but we generally don't strike this unless we want to farm hand. Like if our opponent's at very low damage, they have 1 or 2, and we know Giganoto probably can't kill them because they have a decent hand. We just want to go, but we have maybe a sweeper on board with a bunch of gauges. Then we can just do this. We don't have to commit touch hand. We can get rid of some of the gauges on the sweeper, reset this, and then we can swing again, get 6 drive checks, not bad. But generally, this card feels pretty weak, this format. I wouldn't go into it that often. Also, it does deck you out pretty fast. So, but in this deck, generally, my second strategy deck. 2 Genshu Raptor, and I know everyone's gonna say, why are you playing this card? We play this card now. We play this at 4. So this actually is really, really good in this deck. Like, it's basically Anger Blader, except it also it doesn't give power like Anger Blader, but it does also kill our opponent's stuff, which can matter a lot against decks like Red Blue. Maybe if for some reason they don't Lily sooner, we can just pop their field. Now they can't Lily. Against anyone that has a Honolulu on board, if they already maybe used their Dismal on the last turn, we can just go into this. We pop that Honolulu, and then yeah, we're good to go. I did stride into this like twice on the day itself. The second one never came up, but I mean in testing it can come up. So yeah, in testing it did come up like once or twice. So yeah, I would just play the second one. I don't see really what you could cut. Maybe you could play a copy of Dynames, but I don't think it's really needed. I don't think you need the third copy of Neb either. Next up, one Seabreeze. Honestly, during the day, this was just flip fodder for Neb. Generally, you don't really use this. And again, if it's just for the Dark Rex play, like I said, or if your hand is like really bad, you have nothing on board, the only grade 3 you can ride is an Anger Blader or a Dark Rex. You can just ride Anger Blader or Dark Rex. You don't want to commit any board, you can CB2, strike this, swing, get triple drive, try to build a hand, hopefully you survive. Also, the CB2 cost isn't that bad because of Dino Down, so yeah, you can refund it pretty easily. Next up, to Devastate. People might say this is mostly just for Link Choker. That's true. Against CBD, against Chaos Breaker, we do one. But also against if we're in situations where our opponent has like a lot of cards on their board, and we just want to clear their board, like against Highlander. If they end on like a Pearl Sister, Pearl Sister, Q-Tier, a Hot or whatever else they have on board, like a Bertoa maybe, you can just go into this, swing with this first, you engorge, you stack 3 stuff on your field, you clear their whole board, and then they just like they can't really do much because you get rid of their Pearl Sister, they lose a lot of attack power essentially. Also against decks like what's a good example? Against the leaders as well. Get rid of their Givens or anything they have still on board. They don't really like that. Against Aqua Force, you can do that again. You can swing with this first, you can clear their board, they don't like that. Yes, you could say, they can Iohanas give their borders as well. Just swing with this first. You lose, yes, you're losing attacks, but that's fine because you're clearing their whole board and they really don't like that.
Wait.
So yeah, this also what?
You know this gets around resist, right?
No, as in you swing with this first. Alright, let's get around resist.
Yeah, it sends cards from their respective circles to the drop zone. It doesn't target.
Let me do that again.
It gets around Dismal. Like if you Dismal something, it still gets around it.
Earlier, I haven't eaten lunch.
No, I'll leave you this in. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, fuck you. I'll restart. Fuck you, Trump. Yeah, it targets a circle. So even if they Iohanas, screw you. GG, shake head. Next game. Screw you, Charlie. Almost never comes up. If you get to it, it's pretty funny. The effect is whenever something is retired, doesn't have to be by a card effect on your field. You can give something 10k and retire something on your opponent's board. So like you can just swing, engorge, give stuff 10k, and start popping stuff in their opponent's field. Against Grand Blue, do this where you can essentially start calling over your stuff, popping their field. Now they don't have Lily. Now they are like feeling really bad, and you give 10k to a bunch of things. Never came up in testing. Honestly, never came up in. Testing, I could get to it once, but I won the game before that happened. On the day itself, never came up because my opponents just died before that happened, or I died. So then G guards, 2 Regal Guarder. I'll just show this as well because there's a pretty neat combo with this. And 1 Gengar. So essentially, what you can do sometimes is if you have 2 heals, you can G guard Gengar. Gengar target like 2 things on your field, maybe a Dilo or a Mercenary if you have one. Then you can G guard into this, pop them, get shield, and then because of this skill, they'll bounce back to your hand, so you get to use them for next turn. Pretty good. Also, this just gets big shield. Like you can pop your Mercenary on board. If you really have to, you can pop Sweeper and draw some cards to try and survive. But just pretty good. Gets pretty big shield. They're pretty combo with this as well. We only really need 1 because we are playing something else instead. If you don't own the card that I'm about to show, then you can play the second one instead. Then we have 1 Dismal. Just being able to protect something on field, like a Sweeper maybe if our opponent keeps attacking into it for whatever reason, or a Mercenary, a Dark Rex or whatever, or we just need to keep a card on board. We can Dismal it, like a Shooter maybe we call. Our opponent can get rid of it. We can just Dismal so they can't get rid of it. It doesn't come up that much, but you're happy when it does come up. And 2 Bullish Fiber, flip G guard, gets us to GB8. So yeah, I don't think I did explain much. Just really good. All right, that's it for the main deck. That's it for the deck tournament report now. So hold hold on, let me just pull it up here. So I'll talk more. I'll talk about like how the matchups went exactly, so so people can maybe understand like how this deck would function against these decks. So round one, I faced our Revengers. I went second. So against Revengers, the matchup is not is you just have to be careful against that deck because if you give them 4, they can just ride up and clap you. Unless you have a really, really good hand. Generally, I wouldn't give them 4. So against that, in this matchup specifically, he G-assisted for grade 1. And because he G-assisted, I was able to keep track of most of his hand. And on my turn 1, I think I did get a Seeper on board. I shooter Seeper. Then I bashed on turn 1. On turn 2, on turn 2, he rolled a grade 2, an 8k grade 2 that like when says when placed, you call a Revenger grade 1 to the same column. I don't remember her name. But then after that, he swung Van again. I think I guarded I no guarded. I went to 1 damage and then I rode into Megarex. I bash face at Seeper. I had a thought for a sec. Do I give this guy 4? Because I had because he took one of my. I checked a crit on my Vanguard swing, so he went to 3 because he guarded on turn 1. Then it was either I thought, okay, do I give him 4 or do I just stop here? I thought well maybe because based on what I knew was in his hand, I knew he wouldn't be able to extend that much on a Raging Form turn. I was at 1 damage. I had a PG. I had a heal guard, so I was pretty much chilling unless he hit like all the crits in his deck. And yeah, he just rode up, did 2 Vanguard attacks. I guarded 1. I took 1. I took another 1. I went to or 4 because he didn't check any crits. And then because of his drive checks and because of the cards he added of Renal, I knew most of his hand was grade 3s. So like he started on the start of my turn. I asked him for hand size. It was 10 cards in hand. I knew at least 3 were grade 3s. I knew he didn't have that much guard value, and Revengers does run a few 5k shields in the deck, so quite a few. So yeah, I just wrote Giganoto, smack face, he dies. Round 2 was the Tachi Mirror. I went first. It was a very good thing I went first because this guy was running Dino Chaos in his list. He turn 1 I wrote Prism Bird. Turn 2 1 he wrote Shooter. He got the Sweeper on board. Then he bashed on turn 2. I didn't have any shield in hand. I took. Then my next turn I did get a Sweeper on board because of a Dilo. Then like his Sweeper was bigger than mine. I attacked face. He went to 2. Then he drove checked the heal on turn 1, so I knew he had a heal in hand. Then he rode again. He rode Megarex. He called Sweeper. He swung Megarex. I guarded the Megarex. I took the Sweeper. I went to 3. I had 2 options at that point. I was like, do I ride up here to try and farm because I had Spino in hand, or do I try and contest this grade 2 game? This is something I learned from Charlie. If you see in this kind of in that specific situation, contest the grade 2 game, he's just gonna stay on grade 2, and I'm just gonna die because his Sweeper will snowball faster than my Sweeper will. Eventually, I'll get pushed to high damage. He can just ride up and kill me. Whereas if I'm at 3, I can just ride up now, try to farm a hand, try and check some heals or triggers, so I can stabilize. So it's more likely that on his next turn, I can check a few defensives to try and survive, and I kill him on my next turn. So that's what I did. I rode into Spino. I managed to farm a decent hand because of Megarex, because of Dilo. I got to 10 cards in hand. I didn't have that much shield, but yeah. He rode Dino Chaos because he didn't have another grade 3. He strode into Ganchu Raptor. So he did a Ganchu Raptor turn with a Sweeper, and the Vanguard. He didn't have an Excel marker. I guarded the first 2 Sweepers. I no guarded Van. He checked triple blank. And on my first damage check, I hit the over trigger. That was pretty cringe. But I gave all effects to my Sweeper because I didn't want him to attack into it because I needed that for the next turn. And he decided not to attack my Vanguard. He just passed turn, giving me no CB. But luckily I had Dino Dell, so I could still play the game essentially. Then I thought, okay, I think in that situation I could get 3 Sweepers on board and get them to 3 gauges. So I went into Genshu Raptor, and he hit a heal which went off on the Genshu Raptor turn, but the rest of his hand was not much shield, so he still died. So yeah. And then round 3 was against Highlander. My opponent was god, honestly. Like, it was just so good. He went first, but he didn't ride grade 1 for some reason. He said pass turn. So I smack face on turn 1. His turn 1, he rode Ratka. Swung, no guard. Then turn 2, I rode again. I bash face at Sweeper and stuff. Then on his turn 2, he rode Lizelot, and off Lizelot he called Q-Tier. I was like, oh god. Off Q-Tier, he declared Velvet Voice Reindeer, which I said sure. But actually, you're not allowed to, and when he finally revealed it, he revealed the V-Series Reindeer. Actually, you can't add that to your hand with Q-Tier because Velvet Voice Reindeer says, the V-Series one specifically says it counts as a trigger unit in your deck. So you're not allowed to add that off Q-Tier. So I called Judge on him, and I called the Judge, and the Judge confirmed it. So he whiffed the Q-Tier search. Then he rode into I grade 2 game for one more turn. He rode Anj. He did Anj things. I tried to stay at low damage. Sorry, no, I went to 5 because I knew he had a Honolly in hand because he added it off tier. Then on my Giga Nodo turn, he managed to survive because based on Anj and based on his drive checks, I knew what 5 out of the 5 or 6 of his 10 or 11 cards in hand were. So I knew like one was a Honolly, one was a 10k, one's a 5k, one's a 5k, one's a grade 3. So I knew what those 5 were. The other 5 that I didn't know of was a heal, a Sandy, a Pumo, a Rishas. Like he's actually just gone. He just hard drew all of that. He didn't drive check them. He's just gone. He was forced to drop a lot of resources to survive my Giga Nodo turn. He wasted all his CB on my turn because of his G guard, because of Honolly and stuff. So yeah, I did manage to play around the Honolly, even though I couldn't get the last attack in because of Honolly. I did swing with my biggest sweeper first, which didn't have crit, so he was forced to guard that or take it. So yeah, then he strode Vanilla Anj. He just did 3 attacks. I guarded all of them. I survived. And then next turn I went Nebiros and he died. Because I had enough deck for it. And I didn't have the resources to do anything else. So that was my only play. And luckily he died on the Nebiros turn. Round 4 was against the leaders. He went first. I rushed turn 1. I don't think I got sweeper. I don't remember. Oh no, I did. I turned 1 sweeper Noah. Turn 1 shooter sweeper Noah. I rushed him on turn 1. Turn 2 rush. He swings. I guarded. Turn 2 I rush again. He decided not to ride up and stay on grade 2 for another turn. He swung with the Vanguard. I was at 1 damage. I guard for 15k OT to pass. He checked OT. And then I went to 3. I guarded the next attack. Then my turn, I agreed to game for another turn. Then he finally rode up to try and kill, but I had 2 heal guards in hand, so I was able to survive the turn by heal guarding twice. And he didn't check that many triggers on his Vanguard attacks because he did have double given, so he could restand the Vanguard twice, but he didn't check. He didn't check many triggers on the first and second Vanguard attack. So yeah. Then my hand was like kind of really good for a Genshu Raptor turn, so I went Genshu Raptor. He checked double V trigger and ended my turn basically, but it was fine because I did manage to force him to lock his own rear guards, so I wouldn't retire it off Genshu Raptor. So yeah, that was pretty good. But then I thought I was basically gonna lose the next turn because I thought he just tried Cosmic Dawn and I'm dead. But for some reason he strode into the Premium Collection stripe, the 2021 that says you delete that deletes markers. So he deleted my 1 Excel marker with sweeper on it. He swung for 51k and with 3 crits because of Force 2. I was at 5 damage. I intercept with both my sweepers. I guard with everything except for 2 cards in hand because the last 2 cards in my hand were grade 3s. I say 1-2 pass. He checked grade 3 blank. So yeah, the next turn I don't remember what I did, but I think I went Giganoto and he lost after that. But yeah, because most of his triggers are out of his deck as well. So yeah, I was 4-0. Charlie was really hyped. I was messaging him on Messenger as it was progressing. A lot of people are very hyped. The Itachi is going 4-0. Round 5 was against Irads. I made a small misplay, but he did like check 2 heals in the early game, so he kept healing to 2 low damage to kill him. And like I misplayed by guarding with a Dino Doll, whereas I really shouldn't have, because if I had this, I could have had an extra soul, which could have made killing on Giganoto easier. But in the end, it didn't matter because he hit a defensive. He would have survived my turn regardless. Like just small mistakes with guarding was what costing me that game. But oh well, it is what it is. Round 6 was against Team Maidens. This is We're Up, the leader of WCC. So this is the game where Anger Bleeder won me the game. I rushed. This is the only game of the tournament where I actually opened so my opening hand for that game, Sweeper, Mega Rex, and this is my opening hand. I just kept it. I didn't mulligan anything, and I went second. So turn 1 Sweeper, turn 1 shooter into Sweeper, Noah, bash. Early, he didn't get Entrana turn 2, which was pretty lucky on my end, which I got a bit lucky in that regard. He rode into Inglisa. He did the skill. He went into Time Leaper. He checked a crit on the time. He Time Leapered grade 1 into Entrana and Entrana into Gearcat. And on his Entrana swing, on his Vanguard swing, I guarded for 2 to break. He checked blank and crit. He gave all to Entrana. I PG'd the Entrana because I didn't want to go to 5 against Team Maidens. Then next turn, he was at 2 damage. and I had Anger Bleeder and Dark Rex in hand, and I had the second, and I had another Seeper on board. I had two options essentially. It was either I stay on grade 2 or I ride into Anger and try and kill. Based on what he drove check and based on what he revealed of Cat and Entrana, I knew what most of his hand was, and I determined that Anger, and he had like no bind zone set up at all because the Entrana revealed a Lorok and a Rollock and a crit, so he had no bind set up. He had 3 rear guards on field. I had two options. I was either do I ride up here and try and kill an Anger, or do I stay in grade 2? I concluded Anger was probably the best option because Anger would have nuked his board. Even if I don't kill him, he would have been left with probably nothing to work with on his next turn. Because again, also he did play Heal Guard for some reason, so which generally they don't see metas don't run Heal Guardians, but he was, so yeah. So his Heal Guardians were turned off. Yeah, I was right, luckily. Again, Dark Rex put in so much work in that game because this was way bigger than a mercenary. This was at like 29, 30k against that deck, which is slightly bigger than Merc. And then also the Anger gave it +5. So yeah, he got crypt. I nuked his board. I had 0 cards in hand. I smack. He went to 5. Yeah, he got it with his OT. He got it with Elementaria Sanctitude. He got it with Rollock. He dropped almost his whole hand to survive. He started his turn with 3 cards in hand. 2 cards in hand, sorry. Draw for 10 made it 3. He had to ride 1, and he had to ride, and then he had to also stride. But the only grade 3 he had in hand was a Heal Guardian, so he wrote a Heal Guardian. And the last 2 cards in hand were grade 1 and grade 2. So he strode, but he couldn't stride Slishma because he had no board, and he had no bind zone set up with Slishma. And also Slishma does need to bind something to call 2 from bind. So yeah, he couldn't Slishma me. Altered wouldn't have done anything. So he strode Ragnar Clock and just swung at Vanguard and said no grade 0s from hand. I just took it. He checked blank heal. Then my next turn, I can't stride because only 3 cards I have in hand is a Dilo or grade 0, and I draw for a turn was a Dino Dial. So I had no stride fodder. So I just stayed on Anger and I just killed him that way. But yeah, and then we ended up 5-1 in Swiss going into top 8. It was very tight. Then top 8 was against Spike Brothers. He wasn't really sure, I think, what my deck did, and I just rushed turn 1, and turn 2 he couldn't rush me back because he didn't really have the pieces to rush. Then turn 3 he rode into Rising Nova and he did a whole Rising Read on turn. I stayed at 3 damage. Then I drew my OT this game. I got it with my OT. Then I went to Neburos because he from 3 to 2, making it too hard to kill on a Giganoto turn. And he had a decent chunk of hand. And I knew 1 was a heal, so I determined Giganoto will probably not have killed. So I just went Neburos to try and pressure him and farm some hand. And on my Neb swing, I checked double crit. So and he no guarded at 2 damage, so he went to 5. But then he checked heal, so he went back down. The heal didn't. It being a heal didn't really matter. What mattered was the defensive. Then he guarded with his OT on my Vanguard swing. I checked another crit, and then his next turn he couldn't full combo with Galley, so he did like about half a combo with Galley. I survived the combo. Then on my next turn, he had like 6 or 7 cards in hand. I knew what 3 of them were. I didn't. So based on what I knew, I felt that Neb would have probably killed him. I thought Neb was guaranteed game because if I go Giganoto, if he checks a single defensive, I'm dead because he can 100% guard the rest of my swings, and then I can't do anything. So I thought Neb would have been GG. The remaining 3 cards I didn't know of. I didn't know what they were, but as long as it wasn't PG, as long as it wasn't 2 PGs, I probably could have won the game. But fortunately, the last 3 cards he didn't know what they were. Was a grade 3, a PG, and then he gallied me and I died. If I had went Giganoto, I actually would have won the game. Oh well, it happens. I didn't. If I had known he had at least 1 PG, maybe I would have went Giganoto. But it's fine. It happens. That's what happened during WGP. Overall, pretty happy with how the deck performed. I don't think anyone expected Tachis to do that well during this event, but I got a lot of people praising the deck building on the day. Like nobody was expecting Tachis as well. So yeah. Thanks to honestly, thank you, Charlie, for all your help with building this deck. You're the main reason that I can play this deck properly. Next shout out is Gia convincing me to put this in. Next up, I also want to shout out Dean from DF Court. He's also an MCC. He's an MCC member. The amount of games I put this man through with Tachikaze is actually absurd. I feel so bad for him, but thankfully it worked out. It paid off in the end. Sushi Slayer as well for all the games I put you through, like all the DI versus Tachi games I have put you through. Worth it in the end. Even though I didn't face DI. Thank you, Sushi. Also, everyone from my locals, Mola Hobby Shop, there, really good guys. Thanks thanks a lot to them as well for the support and stuff. That's pretty much. So, Charlie, you want to say anything?
I love how this deck idea came from a fever.
I didn't even know that.
Just a random night, I was in call with a friend. He cracked his deck, and I was like, my turn. I randomly made a deck something similar to this, and I was like, done.
Didn't you make the original Be Done build that like didn't have this, and then like we put this
Yeah,
instead?
that build was a fever dream build. The anger is a more recent
The
addition.
concept of the deck started from Charlie.
The concept started from a late night wanting to be like original.
I mean, another other option for instead of this was Coel Turbo. The problem with Coel Turbo is the moment your opponent knows what your deck does, you're kind of screwed. Whereas this deck, even if your opponent knows what it does, you can still win games. But if your opponent Coel Turbo does, then you're kind of screwed in that regard. So yeah, buy your Anger Bleeders now before I buy all of them, and you don't have any.
True, they are VRs under the VR protection program, so you might want to get them now.
Get your SR Giganodos. This is the best stride in all of Tachikaze. Buy your Dragon Eggs. This is very important for the Feng Shui. Please, if you don't know what Feng Shui is, look it up. I'm too lazy to explain it. Get your that's pretty much it. The rest of the deck is pretty cheap. Buy your Angers, buy your Sweepers, buy your Dragon Egg SPs. Any last words, Charlie?
Not really. Thank you for coming onto the channel and showcasing your deck list, even though it's just like my last video. But I mean, this one actually got results, so we can say this is a good deck.
I mean, you chose not to bring your list to Vancouver, so that's on you.
In my defense,
What's your
I
defense,
forgot
Charles?
to put anger in the list before Vancouver, so
I got the top with Tachi. I got the top with Tachis and not Seal, and it wasn't Coel Turbo. So yeah,
Hachi best deck.
Tachikaze best deck.
All right.
So
Thank you again for coming onto the channel. Thank you everybody for watching. If you like this content, please like, comment, subscribe. Otherwise, you can check me out on Metafy, metafy.gg/@cardweeb for any coaching. Doesn't have to be Tachikaze, by the way. It can be anything.
Yeah.
Other than that,
I want a free session from him. I can confirm he's a pretty good coach.
I forgot you were a student. I will not lie. I talk to you so much that you're just like a friend who plays Tachis.
That's great.
Thank you guys for watching the video. I'll see you guys later.